regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday. I call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, November 9, 2020, and the time is 7 o'clock p.m. We are present in the Northfield High School Media Center in accordance with Governor Walz's Stay Safe plan. This room has been set up in accordance with the plan's social distancing guidelines. In addition, all those present at the meeting will be wearing face coverings for the duration of the meeting. Board member Rod Hardy will be attending via teleconference in accordance with Minnesota State Statute 13D.021. Also attending tonight's board meeting via teleconference are Aaron Bailey, Director of Community Education, Val Mertisdorf, Director of Finance, Molly Wieselman, Director of Human Resources, Principals Nancy Antoine, Sam Richardson, and Scott Sanis. This meeting is open to the public via live stream. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Dr. Hillman, there were a number of items in the table file.
Yes, this evening in the table file we had several personnel items, appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment, several leaves of absences, the Northfield Swim Club agreement, and then we also had an enrollment report added as well. That's the table file for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no objections, we'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Amy. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We now have an opportunity for residents, business, and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Northfield Public School District to address the board. To accommodate the public comment portion of our meeting, we made available on the district's website the ability for the public to submit feedback to the board via email by 5 p.m. today. All submissions that follow the district policy regarding public comment will be read now by myself, board chair. We have one public comment. This is from Erica Kretsch Campbell. To the school board, it is my sincere and fervent hope that you will not follow the lead of the Anoka School District, who recently decided to continue after-school activities even when learning is all distance learning. It would be wildly irresponsible, especially in light of the CDC's new guidelines deeming even shorter contact than 15 minutes to be close contact for contracting COVID-19 from an infected but asymptomatic person. Thank you for all the work you do. I urge you to adhere to the state suggestion that activities be canceled if school is in the distance model. Again, Erica Campbell. Okay, so we'll move now to items for discussion and report.
You want to go announcements?
Oh, I'm sorry, announcements. I'm sorry, Dr. Hillman, announcements and recognitions.
You bet. We have several announcements this evening. First, we would like to congratulate those who have been elected to the Northfield School Board. So Amy Gerwitz and Noel Stratmon are incumbents who have been reelected, and Claudia George Gonzalez and Corey Butler were also elected, and we will actually canvass those election results at a special meeting this Friday. We just don't have the information from Rice County yet. But we want to thank all the people who ran. We really appreciate people stepping forward into the public arena to be able to run for the school board. It's important that we have good people who are running. So we want to congratulate the winners, and we want to thank everyone for running, and we'll canvass those results yet later this week. So here are the announcements for this evening. We want to thank you to Northfield United Methodist Church for their continued donation of homemade masks for both adults and students. Rice County Public Health has helped the district obtain N95 masks for our health office staff at no cost to the district. They were delivered on October 30th, so we really want to thank Rice County Public Health for their assistance in that matter. We want to congratulate Angie Schock's class at Northfield Middle School. The Imagine Math Ready, Set, Solve contest kicked off the math year in style. The contest ran from August 31st through October 30th. Eligibility for the classroom award required 8+ students actively working in Imagine Math, and they received a $50 e-gift card from Amazon, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, or Domino's. So congratulations, they were one of the national contest winners. We also want to congratulate the following students for signing national letters of intent on, they'll be signing those on November 11th to further their educational and athletic careers in college. We have quite a list. Jessica Boland is going to play hockey at Minnesota State University Mankato. Sylvia Koenig is going to play volleyball at the University of Miami at Ohio. Megan Riley playing volleyball at Arizona State. Emma Torstensen, volleyball at Colorado. Rachel Weber will play volleyball at Southern Utah. Bryn Hostetler will play softball for the University of Minnesota. And Cole Stanchina will play baseball for Winona State. We want to congratulate those student athletes on taking their skills to the next level. And those are your announcements for this evening.
Great, thank you. Board members, anything you would like to add? Okay. So now we can move on to items for discussion and report. Tonight we welcome our elementary school principals, Nancy Antoine, Sam Richardson, and Scott Sanis. Welcome.
Thank you, school board members, board chair Pritchard, Dr. Hillman. We had visited the school board on August 10th with a board presentation outlining some of the goals that we had set for our elementary schools. And knowing this year was going to be a unique year in many different ways, we set goals that we thought were attainable and realistic. And this year, we have now made it through one quarter, having our students at school, and have learned a lot about some of the new realities of schooling. And tonight we're going to present updates from that August 10th timeframe, and we'll have Nancy Antoine and Scott Sanis will help present some of the key learnings we've had the ability to make so far.
Great, thank you, Sam. Moving on to things that are going well. There are many things that are going well in our district at this time, and it is great to be back in person. I know the students are very happy to be back in person. We can see that on a daily basis with all the smiles. We can see smiles under the masks, for sure, but they are very happy to be there. They're working hard. Teachers are obviously working hard. Our partners program is working very well alongside of us, and I think they've done just an amazing job with the 260 kids that they are serving as well. Our teachers and staff are dedicated and working hard under the difficult circumstances, given all the COVID protocols, and making sure that the kids are wearing their masks, they're staying distance, they eat as a class for lunch, and go outside in their different pods for recess. I think the teachers have done just a fantastic job with that. Our family conferences that we held back in the beginning of September were really helpful in launching a successful year with that emphasis again on relationships. We need to build those positive relationships with students, with families, to make sure that partnership is really strong in case we need to pivot. So that was really key for us. And of course, the roundabout is open, and Greenville Park is open with students in it. The new school over at Greenville Park it's beautiful, it's functional, it's practical, it's just what the new Greenville Park needed. So thank you very much. We've got a lot of great things happening.
All right, now we're going to look at some of the problems we're trying to solve. Stress management for all adults in the school has been challenging. I believe every individual's anxiety level hovers at a higher level than normal during a pandemic. But staff members are very good about supporting one another when dealing with stressful situations. And the district also offered self-care sessions today with Cindy Boyan to support all staff. The teachers are supporting students who are in quarantine for extended periods of time. This provides some logistical challenges and some real strategic use of technology. Our staff members and tech team continue to work with families to combat those challenges. Support for individual students in small groups has decreased significantly. Our community is filled with caring, reliable volunteers, and our new policies do not allow volunteers and visitors, which is understandable during this time. This has removed options for academic and social, emotional interventions for students. We're looking forward to the day when we can allow all of those critical volunteers back into our schools to support our students and staff. Preparing for the hybrid model and the distance learning model is a challenge with many factors to consider for students, families, and staff success. The three of us worked with Hope on creating a hybrid plan for the elementary schools. We sent it to licensed staff members for feedback. The feedback was excellent. We made some adjustments, and we believe we are prepared to roll that out if needed. We're currently gathering feedback from staff members on some distance learning plans that we sent to them. We should be set with that by the end of this week. One of our greatest challenges has been finding substitute teachers and educational assistants this year. On any given day, we could have several unfilled positions in the district. This has been our greatest challenge this year during our in-person model. Our sub pool is depleted, and those who used to sub for us have chosen to take the year off or do other things. In the current photo, you see Amanda Seeger, who was quarantined after being a close contact with someone with COVID. She's been teaching her class from home since last Tuesday, and while it's great to maintain that daily contact, there are several challenges, like finding a staff member to manage the class, being on Zoom most of the day, etc. With all that said, we've been very happy to start this year in person. I'll send it back to Sam for the wrap-up.
Thank you, Scott. So after seeing some of the early successes, and clearly one of the major successes is being able to have students back with us in person or through the Portage program, and then we have some logistical challenges that have our creative, talented people on top of it, trying to solve them daily. We have outside learning as one of our key assets during the beginning of the year, and as the weather turns, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but students were able to get outside and learn. And then this other image is of our first grade teacher team at Greenbelt Park, and they have famous characters from children's books showing mask wearing do's and don'ts to help promote that with their students. So kind of a fun picture there. But we just want to thank you for the opportunity to share about the elementary school progress this year, and wanted to open it up for any questions for Scott, Nancy, or for me.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent, thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Amy?
First, thank you so much for your presentation, and even more for all that you're doing for our students this year and for all the staff is doing. It's certainly an incredible, crazy year to be teaching. My question is just a general question to whoever wants to answer it. I just want to hear more about how you are keeping connected to the Portage students, because those students just feel like they're away from a year and they're going to jump back into the school. So how do you maintain their identity and connection to the individual schools?
I can answer. I can jump in there to begin with. The one big way we're keeping connected with them is that we send them our weekly newsletters so they can keep up to speed with what's going on. We invited them in for our picture day to have pictures taken. We have just a specific time just set aside just for Portage families, so they would come in one door, out the other door, without any of our students at all. Then we also invited our 5th grade Portage students to join in when our 5th graders were running the 5K, so they could participate. So we've had a lot of those different connections. I've had a lot of good communication from Portage families. Number one, at the beginning of the year, they were like, "We're not receiving your newsletter. Can we get back on that list?" And it's like, "Well, of course you can." So now I have all of them on my list, and they get our weekly newsletter, and have had a lot of positive comments from Portage families. Scott or Sam, you want to jump on that one?
We've had a few different events, or not necessarily events, but just offerings that it was really important to make sure that anyone who was part of the Greenbelt Park School, our PTO has been very sensitive to include those families and those students, and give some opportunities if they would choose to participate. They sure can. So I think that our parent group and then our school, like our office team, in communicating, thinking about those students and families as well, so.
Yeah, and I'll agree with everything Sam and Nancy said. The only thing that's a little bit different, Sibley, is we had a book fair scheduled for when our first conferences would have happened, and we kept that book fair in place. We ran it outside, and we invited our Portage families to that as well.
Thank you.
Another,
Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things we've done is when we obviously plan for a yearbook all year long, and one thing we have offered is to make sure that we include our Portage families in our yearbook, because they need to know that ultimately you are a Bridgewater family or a Greenville family or a Sibley family. Just because you choose the Portage program doesn't mean you get excluded. You get to be included, and we want to include it.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Other questions, comments? Ellen?
I want to echo what Amy said in terms of a huge thank you. I've heard from parents at the elementary school, they're of course extremely grateful to have their kids back in school, but I want to recognize the leadership it takes to do that, and you are the leaders. So the communication I've heard has been fantastic in the building of a learning community under these trying circumstances. So thank you so much. I had one question, and as we would love it if we stayed in-person learning this whole year. But if we were to switch to some sort of hybrid model, would you be able to make volunteers virtually? Like, I recognize the challenges right now of not having all the volunteers that you've had, but with a move to virtual, does it open up some possibilities?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a possibility. I know that has been done with some of our Portage students, and there are different options in our community. I know teachers at Greenville Park have, when it's possible logistically and there's still supervision available, they've been able to have some parent volunteers Zoom in where they can provide some guidance, but I do think there are options there, and people are willing to help in our community, and it's using the power of technology and figuring out the logistics to make that happen.
And I would say if we do go to a hybrid model or a distance model, it would be really nice to include some of our National Honor Society students and some of our college students, because I know that the college students rely on that as part of their financial aid packet. And again, the National Honor Society students are usually looking for volunteer opportunities as well, and we would love to include them.
Great questions. Other questions, comments? Tom?
Has it happened, or is it possible to have all the Portage students Zoom in at the same time? With all the, with their classroom that they would normally be part of, so that they could just stay in contact or see each other occasionally?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the entire question.
Sorry. Is it possible, or has it happened, that the Portage students could Zoom in with the class that they would normally be part of, so that all the students could see each other occasionally and, I don't know, just have an open conversation, or just check in, just so they don't lose contact with each other?
I think it's very possible. We haven't entertained that at this point. I do know that parents have taken it upon themselves to organize some Zoom chats with friends who are in Portage and friends who are in our in-person sessions.
We too have not done, we've not connected with specific classes. We do connect, if there's an issue, we obviously connect with the student, with the family, things of that nature, but as far as the class overall, we haven't at this point, because we're trying to pump as much on the academics right now as we can before we may need to switch to a different format.
Okay, thank you. Rob, if it's all right, I'll just call on you during the comments, question portion of each discussion, so you can If you have any, great. If not, certainly just pass.
I don't have anything right now, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Rob. Other questions, comments? I had a question around, Scott, you spoke about the current work on the distance and hybrid learning models. And I know when you were here this summer, there was a lot of talk around student engagement, particularly that it was difficult for students of color. So learning that, of course, was was instrumental, I would imagine, in sort of shaping how you might address that. So if you can make any comments about maybe some strategies that you were informed out of last year that might inform some of the work if we were to have to go to those models.
Well, I believe the transition last year happened really quickly. And if you remember, we didn't have a one-to-one iPad situation for our K2 students. We are now one-to-one for all of our students. I think that will be extremely helpful if we do have to pivot into another learning model. The piece that is still an unknown is connectivity. And that's something that is probably the greatest issue moving forward if we do pivot to a different learning model.
Scott, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, another thing that we learned was, just some of the capacity limits that people have for Zoom, for example, and we use the term synchronous and asynchronous, online, offline, however we want to describe it. But I think teachers managing workflow during the day and students and families, that have different rhythms or different schedules, trying to figure out what's the right amount of that online time where the students can be interacting because they really need that connection. But also knowing that it's different than when you're in person. And we can't pretend that it's the same. So figuring out the right balance of online and more independent work and how to best connect with students to keep everyone engaged. Those are the key learnings that we're going to bring in if we need to pivot.
Excellent, thank you.
And just an update, I talked with some folks, the HCI, Northfield Healthy Community Initiative. They have been instrumental in helping us make sure from last year in distance learning to the beginning of this year to make sure any student who needed help with connectivity could get it. I understand that as of today, there are 183 families or 183 students that HCI is supporting that they already have started to support. Again, we're using a multi-vendor approach where we know some of the families are using Northfield Wi-Fi, some of the families using a special charter program that HCI is paying for straight out. And then we are still using a variety of hotspots that the district had purchased. So we know that there are 183 students who have been supported. That's up significantly from last year because it's not just about having connectivity, it's about having robust enough connectivity. And that was one of the things that we learned last spring. So we do feel confident that we have the connectivity ready should we need to make a change. And we have HCI at the ready. They have a system in place and they are able to address those kinds of things very quickly.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I would echo what Amy and Ellen said. It's always wonderful when we can be, together so that particularly we can thank you. It's Herculean efforts every single day that you walk into the building and probably past the time that you leave the building. So we just are incredibly grateful for your leadership and for your work. And communication comes out from the district level, but that we know families really look to the building principals because you have developed those caring and trusting relationships with not only the students but their families. So we are profoundly grateful and we thank you. And we know there's a lot of uncertainty, but we are heartened to know that you're leading those buildings, and that's really important and gives us a lot of confidence in as we move forward into the school year. So thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing us to share tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, so we'll move on now to self-funded insurance plan. Director of Human Resources, Molly Dieselman, is here to present. Welcome, Molly.
Hello, everyone. As Julie said, I'm just here to give a quick update on where we are at with our self-funded health pool. And so just a little history, just a quick recap of where we came from. The district moved our self-funded health plan, or our fully funded health plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield to the Southeast Service Cooperative in September of 2011. We went self-funded, moving from the co-op to Medica. And then our second year of the self-funded health insurance, we took a slight increase to our premiums. But then we have not had any kind of change in our premiums until 2018 when we took a slight decrease in our premium, and we have maintained that decreased premium, and we will maintain that through December of 2020. Our claims experience for 2018, 2019, and thus far in 2020 have not been positive, but we have had a couple meetings with our benefit advisory committee, and we have a plan of action for moving forward. And so overall, I mean, our self-funded pool has done extremely well with no increases really since 2012. That's almost unheard of. And so the benefits advisory, like I said, they have we've met twice this year, and we have set a minimum balance of a goal of 40% of our claims expenditures. And so you can see by our historical data that our claims expenditures have been getting higher, where our balance has been decreasing. And so that is something that we watch very closely every year. And this year we have, determined that there are some changes that we're going to need to be made. If you look at the claims data, our claims data is really taken a hit the last several years. So for an example, can you go to slide 4, Matt? This year our claims to date are, just under 5.8 million, and that includes a stop loss credits. And so for the month of October, the example here, you can see the claims numbers for each week. Those do include the credits back to our self-funded pool once our reinsurance kicks in. So most of these weeks in October exceeded $250,000 in claims per week. And then that amount is lessened by those that exceed the stop loss amount. And so on average, I mean, a normal week would be around 70,000 to 110,000. So to see 250,000 plus in claims in a 1 week period, consecutive weeks and months in a row has become kind of concerning for our benefit advisory group. So then on the next slide, the current funding, so our current funding, which is our premiums, which includes our employer contributions, the contribution paid by the employee, and then contributions paid by our retirees. It's just not keeping up with our claims experience. And so, and part of that big driver is our prescription drugs. We have multiple employees, for example, taking drugs that are $17,000 per prescription, and then our plan picks up the majority of that based on our current plan structure. So we have talked about making some changes there. So if you look at the next slide, our current prescription drug plan is a $20 copay for preferred drugs or a $75 copay for non-preferred drugs. So in that last example, our plan would pick up the bulk of that $17,000. And so, we can't sustain that type of plan design. And so while we might have to take a multiple year approach for rate increases, we kind of need to realign our plan designs at the same time. So the benefit advisory recommendations are that we make more sustainable changes to our plan design that we currently have in place. And so one of the things that we've talked about is adjusting that RX copayment to a 20% copay with a max of $300 per prescription for preferred drugs, and then a 40% copay on non-preferred drugs to the out-of-pocket max, which we would look at changing to $1,000 for the individual and $2,000 for the family. And then we would also recommend a slight increase to the deductibles in the out-of-pocket max on each of our two health plans as well. And then the next slide, in order to make plan design changes, in the Benefit Advisory Committee unanimously agreed that these were the choices that they thought were best, and so they went to their groups and they recommended that we rather than take a 10%, because that was the minimum we determined we were going to need to keep things in balance. But if we make the plan design changes, then we'll only charge a 5% increase in the premium, and then make the plan changes, and then we can pass at the end of 2021, what those plan design changes, where that got us. And so all 5 unions and associations in our district do need to vote on any kind of recommended change to the plan design. The district can increase the premium without anyone's approval, but if we want to make plan design change, we do go to the unions and they do need to vote. And all 5 have to pass that recommended change. And so and part of the biggest thing with this is the district contribution won't increase until January of 2022. So any increase taken in premium and for 2021 will be paid by the employee, all of our employees that are enrolled in our health insurance. And so the voting has started, and 3 of the 5 unions have approved the recommended changes. The voting is still open to the end of this week for a couple of the groups. So we'll know more about that later this week. Another thing that we've really had a lot of conversations about is the impact of COVID to our self-funded health pool. The free saliva tests that districts received they're not actually free. They're free when we got them, but if anyone uses those tests and sends them in for processing, that is charged to our insurance for anyone that enters their insurance information. Because when you sign up to get the test sent to you, it does ask you to put your insurance into the order. And so then they charge your insurance plan. And all of our plans pay all COVID tests at 100%, no charge to the member. And then we have concerns regarding future medical spend spikes to make up for lost revenues for all areas of the healthcare field. So that is kind of the basics of what we're working on right now. Did anyone have any questions on any of that information?
Great, Molly, thanks. We appreciate the update. Questions, comments, board members have? Ellen?
So assuming that this were to go into effect, that all of the employment groups passed it, would they be able to do pre-tax dollars to individuals to sort of manage this?
Yes, all of our, we automatically process all premium deductions on a pre-tax basis. So yes, if they're paying higher premiums, that would lower taxable income.
Yes.
So as a follow-up, and the co-pays as well, is there a means for them to estimate co-pays and do pre-tax for that?
No, the co-pays are not pre-tax unless they flex money.
Yeah, that's,
Through
I guess, so they can do that.
Section 125 flex plan, they can up to $2,750 for 2021 is the maximum that they can flex. But yes, if they flex it, then they can pay their deductibles with pre-tax dollars as well.
That's a question.
I'm sorry, can I just dovetail on Ellen's question as we're talking about HSA? When is that enrollment, and between now and when that increase, would they have a chance to adjust their HSA?
Yes, once we have the voting process completed and we know which direction we're gonna go, then we have open enrollment meetings in late November, early December. And that's for health insurance, dental, vision, flexible benefits. All of our benefits renew January 1st. So we have open enrollment late November, early December. Normally it's before Thanksgiving, but because we're looking at plan design changes and we have to do the vote process, it takes a little bit longer, so it's pushed back a little bit this year, but the effective date of any changes people are making would be January 1st. So yes, we have open enrollment coming up where people can make those changes.
I'll go to Amy, and then Rob, I know you have a question. Amy.
Thank you for the presentation and for staying on top of all of this insurance stuff. My question is, with the change in the copay structure, if that goes through for prescriptions, how much money do you think what's the difference in money that will come in just with that one piece of it?
I don't have a good answer for that. When you're talking, instead of a $20 copay for a $17,000 prescription, and we're looking at moving that to a 20% copay up to a $300 max. I mean, that's a pretty significant, and it's not an overly high cost to the member, but it doesn't leave the plan paying, $16,900 some dollars for that prescription either. That type of prescription drug copay with the rising cost of prescription drugs is not going to be sustainable moving forward. So that's why we're kind of looking at making changes. And then if people choose to use non-preferred drugs that are still on the list, they would cost a little bit more at 40%, copay. So I do think that will make a pretty large impact on the overall plan, but I don't have an exact number for you on that, Amy.
Yeah, I was just looking at the deductibles because the caps, the out-of-pocket maximums, they don't seem like they've changed that much for people. So maybe I don't understand exactly how it works. Is that per prescription or is that per year?
Well, the $17,000 example I gave is per prescription, and that particular prescription is for multiple sclerosis. So there's not a large number of employees taking it, but a handful taking it, and then there's anti-inflammatory drugs like Humira that are also run around about that same price. And those are administered, on a every 6 to 8 week basis. That's an injectable drug, and they run about that same cost. And we have another, completely different handful of employees using, those types of drugs. So I do believe that it will make a difference. But the out-of-pocket maximum on the prescriptions, you're right, it went from $750, $1,000 for the family, $750 for the individual to $1,000 and $2,000. And that's the max the employee would ever have to pay, but it is a higher copay right off the bat, and they do pay it a little bit longer than they currently do. And then we're also increasing the deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes slightly on the medical side of the health plans as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rob, you have a question.
I was just curious about whether you or the plan administrator negotiates the allowed amount that's billed, because it's always, something's much higher is billed and then there's a negotiation with the insurer to it'll lower. So that's something you do, or does the administrator do that?
Well, we are the plan administrator. We do have a consultant that we use through One Digital. But the insurance companies themselves do negotiations with the pharmaceutical, and then it depends on who their third-party administrator is for their drugs. Like Prime Therapeutics, there's different ones that different companies use. And so our current health carrier is Medica. We switched from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Medica, back to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then last year we went back to Medica. And we look at that, our benefit advisory group looks at that every year as well to make sure that we're not able to get a better pricing with our premiums and whatnot with the other company. But we have used both and have had, some successes and some drawbacks with each carrier. But the carriers themselves, when you're in network with them, they have done negotiations for the best prices with those providers and third-party administrators. So yes, definitely that there's that negotiation going on. We as a district and a plan administrator don't do that ourselves, but the insurance companies have those contracts with the providers and the third-party administrators.
That's like through Medica or whatever, they're
Right.
to take care of that. All right, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments? Tom?
Is the fund balance goal of 40% our goal, or is that a limit, the max we can have?
No, that is our goal. The benefit advisory committee set that 40% of our claims expenditures. Just to, we always want to be, we don't want to be in a position where we have more claims that need to be paid than what we have money in our self-funded pool. So we have set that claims experience at 40% to maintain a balance of 40% of what our expected expenditures are, just to ensure that we keep that at a healthy balance.
If that was higher, could we then draw on that, and then instead of having a 10% increase, could it have been lower? And to maintain maybe a 50 or 60% higher, especially given the increased cost of medical care, and if you had like a 1 or 2% each year increase instead of 0%, and then all of a sudden you have like 10%, which is a substantial amount to get to go up all at once. Would that, I don't know, maybe be a better approach?
Well, we have done that, and again, the benefit advisory committee looks at that every year, and we didn't have good claims experience in 2018, 19, or 20, but we had a fund balance that was well above our 40%. And so instead of increasing premiums, we never intended to, function as like a bank. We're not, interested in keeping more money in the fund balance than what we need to pay the claims, and we always want to make sure we find that balance between district contribution and the employee contribution. And so the last couple of years, we have utilized some of that higher fund balance in order to maintain our premiums so it's affordable for our employees. But that balance is something that we do look at every year. And we decide premiums as a group, and the group as a whole felt that with a fund balance much higher than what our goal was, that we needed to use some of that fund balance to offset some of those increases. So that is something that we definitely look at every year, that balance.
No.
Thank you for the report, excellent report. When the self-funding plan was put in place, I don't recall that we expected a $17,000 prescription. Has the definition of prescription been changed by the health insurance people?
Definitely since 2011, there has been a pretty, I would say, substantial increase to the cost of prescription drugs in that time period. That's, we're talking 9 years. And the cost of prescription drugs kind of continues to go up each year, and especially some of those drugs like what I've mentioned for like Humira. There's not a whole lot of drugs on the market that help that particular class of employees with That's taken for people with like Crohn's disease or people with ulcerative colitis, inflammatory type diseases. And there's not a whole lot of things in the market that work similar, so the price of those types of drugs has substantially increased since 2011. That's for sure, Noel.
Thank you.
Amy, you had another question?
Yes, I had also a question about the stop loss reinsurance. If we've been utilizing that so heavily, is that expected to go up in price as well?
Yes, that will, the more it's used, the higher the premium will be for that. For example, I believe we have 10 or 11 high-cost claimants, and I think 6 of them have exceeded stop loss, which means our stop loss attachment point is $125,000. So any claims that exceed $125,000 are then picked up by our reinsurance, or what we call stop loss. So our plan, the maximum our plan has to pay for any given person is $125,000, and then the reinsurance or stop loss kicks in. But the more people you have utilizing that, the higher premium we're going to pay for that in the next year at our renewal. And oddly enough, we had slightly increased our stop loss last year from 100,000 to 125, I believe. Val, can you verify that?
Yes, we went from 100 to 125, but I want to say we did that in 2018 because it was the first year that we had on average between like 2 and 4 people meeting our stop loss, and so mathematically it made sense to take on the risk of the extra 25,000, except we did it at the exact wrong time and have now had terrible claims experience for the last 3 years. So it is at 125 now, and it's not something we could go backwards on. They would charge an exorbitant amount to go backwards. So
yeah, stop loss is its own animal, and yes, we at a time when our fund balance had grown so much, and we only had roughly 2 to 4 people exceeding stop loss, it made sense at that time to pay less in premium with a higher attachment point. And then our claims started going in the wrong direction. So that was not a great experience with our self-funding, but we are currently, looking at rebalancing that, and I really have a feeling that we can move forward in a positive way again, as long as we can get things back in balance. And it's, the unfortunate part is we just have I think it's like 26 people that are driving roughly 80% of our claims. And so we have some, people that are not well at all in our district, and that's unfortunate, and that's what the health plan is there for. So we just have to look at how we can balance it again moving forward to keep it sustainable.
So has the anticipated increase in the reinsurance costs been calculated into the rates that the employees will need to pay?
Yes, that's part of our the current renewal that we got in October. We got the renewal from Medica, and yes, that's definitely part of that equation.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I just had one question. I know we have the contract for the administration of the plans. When is that up for renewal, and do you anticipate a increase for that?
For
the administrator of the administration, don't we contract with someone for the administration or the plan?
Julie, that's through Medica, so
Okay.
They do we are self-insured, but they do the administration, so the self-insurance or the reinsurance, stop loss, and their administration fee is all part of that process that we go through.
Okay,
Right.
okay. Well, I just, a comment, I don't think we can underscore enough how incredibly successful this program's been, and I know it was really difficult work that the the benefit advisory committee had to do. I think they obviously have a great deal of experience and looked at, the most feasible options for doing this. And, we know this program won the Government Innovation Award, and so it's a really good program. And I think as much as you wanted to continue to maintain where things were, it's just not always realistic. And I think that, you took great care in trying to figure out as many ways as you could make it the most feasible for people to afford, and it was a difficult decision. So we really appreciate the work that committee and yourself, Molly, continue to do on this. We know districts struggle with this, and they struggle with increases much larger when they're not in a self-funded health plan. And we know that relatively speaking, these plans they're good, and they're more affordable than what we know other districts are able to provide. And so, we have to, as much as it's difficult to hear this, we know that in the end, you're doing everything you can do to provide this kind of coverage for our employees.
Thank you. It's a great group of people that really understand the issues, and as a group, we've been able to accomplish some really great things for our benefit offerings in the district.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on now to financial update. Val Murdesdorf. Welcome.
Thank you. Pretty quick financial update tonight. Not a lot has happened since the last meeting. We are still working through our CRF funding. We have until Friday to spend 75% of that $1 million. And then basically next Monday, MDE is going to reach out if districts have not spent the 75%, just to ensure that the funds will get spent. This grant is very, very particular, and you have to receive anything, any goods, and spend everything by December 30th. So it is very black and white, and so they are really helping districts and trying to stay on top of it to make sure it gets utilized. So we are working through that just to make sure we have all of the pieces in place and the payroll in the right buckets and all of those things. So that's been taking a bit of time to get through, but we're almost there. And we are hoping to wrap up the audit. I'm hoping by next week we should have some final numbers. They will present to the board December 14th, I believe is the meeting. So you will get that presentation then, and we will go from there. So, but with the final numbers, it allows my department to start working on a revised budget and a new financial forecast to make sure we know where everything shook out and where we're headed. So that will be good to get taken care of. We did also apply for a coronavirus relief grant through Goodhue County, and we were approved for $340. I applied for about $7,000. So we will certainly take all of the funds we can get to help cover all the costs that we're working through. So other than that, I think those are the big ones for right now that we're working on. I'll gladly entertain any questions you might have.
Excellent, thanks. Val, questions, comments board members have? All right, thank you, Val, for all the work you're doing. It's tough, very tough. Okay, we'll move on to operations update. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, and in this evening's operations update, which we're going to start titling again. For a long time, we've called it the COVID-19 operations update, and then we shifted it back to just the operations update. But of course, we usually include, well, we always include something around COVID-19. So when we talk about tonight's update, I'm going to share a handful of pieces around COVID-19 and then some information about Portage. And then we'll also talk about an upcoming discussion that I'd like the board to consider. So to begin with, when we think about the way that we have communicated our laboratory confirmed cases, we made a few changes in that over the past couple of weeks. Initially, at the beginning of the school year, we planned to use the general notification template from the Minnesota Department of Health. And you have all seen the template. It's very technical in nature, and it's you're not allowed to change the template. And we got some feedback that sending that out each time that we had a laboratory confirmed case to staff was causing some anxiety and for our families as well. So we looked at a separate way that we could do that. So of course, anyone who is deemed a close contact gets both a phone call and an email. What we shifted to is we've now sent 2 weekly COVID-19 case updates. We send those to families on Friday afternoons. We basically share the total number of cases in the district over the last week. We provide a link to our district dashboard, and then we also share the information about the weekly case rate from Rice County. We also improved our dashboard to where we added a column to say what was the last time that that building was updated. As you know, we are reporting on a building level. Sometimes districts are just reporting at a district level. We chose to report at a building level. So we give the last time that was updated, and then we put an up or down arrow whether that last update was an increase or decrease. So we are trying to maintain that ability to be transparent and to make sure that we're communicating effectively with our community while also just really not inundating people with emails about each and every case. So far we have had good feedback about that. Of course, there's always a variety of opinions on how much or how little communication that we should have. We're trying to over-communicate but not inundate, if that makes sense. So one other point is that we did have to make a decision. If there's any staff member who is shared between schools and tests positive for COVID-19, how we're representing them in the dashboard is we are putting them at the school building where they spend most of their day. And so that is, we talked about a number of different ways of how to represent that. We were concerned if we put an asterisk or split it across, that we could inadvertently take that person's privacy away, because while we do have a lot of shared staff, not all of them share in the same configuration between buildings. And so we are committed to making sure that we protect people's privacy while also sharing the information that we do around those cases. I want to spend a little time tonight talking about what I'm now going to use the term alarming case increase in Rice County. There is no other word to use than alarming. When I wrote this to you on Thursday, I told you that the highest case rate I had seen since the start of the pandemic, 73, was the day that I wrote to you. Since then, we've put up a 94 and a 70. 2 weeks ago, our case rate was for 2 weeks in a row was around 26. Last week, that case rate per 10,000 residents in Rice County went to over 40%. And if you just can do a little bit of math and you see a 70 and a 94 and another 70 or 73, we don't have to have A's in calculus to understand what is happening in the county. In the last week alone, we have seen over 330 new cases in 1 week. If you compare that to the previous week, we had 126 cases the previous week. And at all segments of the county level, when you talk about the case rates, they are going to continue to go up. And the Department of Health and Rice County Public Health are concerned, as are we. Overall, in the system, we have had, in most buildings, we have been in reasonably good shape. We have not avoided cases. We never knew we were going to avoid cases. But right now, we have an appropriate concern about Northfield High School. So we have seen, just since Friday, between Friday and today, 9 new cases among the Northfield High School community. So we are now at 17 active cases in the last 14 days, and a total of 26 cases at Northfield High School. Now I want to come back and remind you that in the update I shared with you that at the beginning of the school year, when we started with the Safe Learning Plan, what we had was that county case rate. But as we've done throughout the entire pandemic, we have continued to learn, and the Department of Health has continued to learn, what are some of the other data points that are key in determining a school learning model. They emphasize every single week in their update that The county case rate is what, but one piece of data that you use to select the new learning model. I've shared with you before, it's things like influenza-like illnesses, the total number of close contacts that you might have had in the building, number of people quarantining. We're looking at staffing. Do we have enough staff? As the county case rate rises, when there are more positive cases, of course there are more people who are close contacts. And when you think about how that spider web is out, I think most of us know people who have had to quarantine or something because of a close contact with someone who has tested positive. So we're looking at a number of different pieces, but I do want to share with you that even though it's but one data point, the increase in Rice County is troubling at best. And we just are concerned that we are entering a time period where there could potentially even be a greater case rate. We're going into some very popular holiday seasons where people are not always willing to get rid of their traditions. And so things like the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday, a joyous holiday, something we all, it's very celebratory. We know those things are going to be, it's not about if they're going to be, we know that they are going to be engines, right, for further spread. So I don't mean to sound apocalyptic here, that's not my point, but I need you to know that we have been consulting. We consulted today with the Minnesota Department of Health. We consulted with our incident command team. We're continuing to review the data and determine, are there steps that we need to be taking with our learning models? And we will be continuing to review that tomorrow and into the next few days. So I just want to share with you that in every call that we've had with the public health department, they have been very complimentary of schools and the work that they've done. They've been very clear that this is a community issue. It is not a school issue, because the school, of course, is a microcosm of the community. And so when we see spread in the community, we're going to see spread within our schools. There are 2 larger outbreaks in the county right now that are being managed, but what the Department of Health will tell you is that there is pretty significant community spread. So we continue to work and take these protocols very seriously. People are working harder than ever to make sure that if we do have positive cases, that the contact tracing is done very quickly. We have seen circumstances now in the last week where we have had to quarantine entire classrooms. The younger the student, the more difficult it is for us to be able to trace and make sure that there was 6 feet between people at all times. So I'm transparent about that with you. When you have a longer bus ride, if you have a longer bus ride, the threshold is 30 minutes. If you're at 30 minutes or more, if there's a person on that bus that tests positive, the Department of Health says that whole bus gets quarantined. So these are the challenges that we face. And I think that it's amazing that we made it to the end of the first quarter, right? We are grateful that we made it to the end of the first quarter. I'm not telling you what our next steps are yet. I want you to know that we are paying very close attention. We are connecting with the people who give us the best advice, and will make the appropriate decisions to prioritize the health and safety of our students. I need you to know too how quickly this ramped up. I gave you some numbers. Just a few weeks ago, we were getting worried if we saw a 15 in a day. And now we'd all take a 15 in a heartbeat, right? Because we are seeing numbers in the 70s and the 90s. So the way that this has ramped up in the last week it is amazing. We talked with Rice County Public Health today, who's on top of this, and it went from a somewhat manageable piece to, in the last week, the cases have really gone through the roof. So I'm not telling you anything that's not on their public health website, but I want you to know that we're taking this very seriously, and we're looking at what are the right next steps for our students. Again, I've shared with you what the protocols that we have that are so important, and then I want to share with you that multiple times over the last month, I have implored families to have a plan, right? So going back to the middle of October, even before that, we have implored families to use the Make a Plan Minnesota website to have a plan should we have to shift learning models. So I can tell you I received an email from one family at a school where their child had to leave the school for close contact. And they said that they gave the example of that we had shared with them that we needed them to have a plan. And of course, while it was troubling, they felt they had all the tools that they needed to make the shift because of the communication that we had with them. That's great, but for every person like that, we also know there are other people who don't have a plan yet. But we have encouraged and will continue to encourage people to have a plan should we need to make those changes. So again, we'll continue to just make these learning model update. We have also, as you heard, our elementary principals. In the summer, we brought people together. We had over 60 people who had come together in our 3 work groups, if you remember, to talk about what were the kinds of learning plans that we were going to have for the year once we learned what the expectations were going to be. And so we have had 3 plans ready to go. But when you're into it for a quarter, we're learning from other districts. We're talking to other districts who had been in hybrid. We're talking to other districts who've been in distance learning. We're talking to our own Portage teachers, right? And saying, what are, now that we continue to have more experience, what are the best practices? What are the things that we should use if we had to consider updating our learning models? And so you heard our elementary principals talk about how Director of Instructional Services Hope Langston has worked with them to make sure that they just didn't say, oh, we developed in the summer what sounded great in a conference room in the summer clearly needs to be updated. So those updates have been taking place over the last several weeks in the middle school and high school, have been also looking at their distance learning plans since they're already in the hybrid model. So I want you to know those plans weren't set it and forget it, right? We looked at it and said we need to make sure that in our continuous improvement model, how can we make each of those better? As far as Portage, we now have 640 students in that all-the-time online program. And as you heard, it was about 260 of them are elementary students, with the balance being secondary students. We are pleased, as we've mentioned many times, we believe in continuous improvement. And at the beginning of the school year, we did not feel that we were able to offer remote band, choir, or orchestra instruction for Portage families. We just wanted to get the school year off the ground. And we were very upfront with that in the webinars to begin with. However, we wanted to make sure those things are offered. As we got into it, we said we'd make any major changes at the end of a quarter, and so I'm proud to share with you that beginning second quarter, over the first week or so of the second quarter, students in the Portage program will be able to access those music programs. And so I want to thank our music professionals who have stepped forward and said, yep, we will be happy to do that. We got to figure out some logistics. There are going to be some limitations on it. Just, it's not like it's going to be everything that you could have gotten at school, but we are opening it. We are being able to do some more work than we were able to before. And I just cannot share enough how unbelievable of a job that Instructional Services Director Hope Langston and Instructional Services Coach Carrie Duba are doing of managing the day-to-day operations of Portage. You think at about 640 students, it's bigger than all 3 of our elementary schools, right, between the two programs, the secondary and the elementary. And so we really needed to assign people to run that day-to-day, and Hope Langston is in charge of managing the elementary program on a day-to-day basis. Carrie is managing the secondary program on a day-to-day basis, and they are doing an excellent job working together. So I just want to make sure that you know the good work that they've done. Finally, going back to our work around anti-racism and symbolism, you've seen my anti-racism framework, you've seen it in action. We talk about symbolism, we talk about individual behaviors, and we also talk about systems behaviors. And something that has been needed to be updated for some time is the Raider mascot logo. And in the spring, before COVID hit, we had a discussion here, and this board came to consensus. You didn't take a vote, right, but you came to consensus to say, have the high school continue to talk about modernizing or updating that logo. Well, that had to go by the wayside for a period of time as we went to emergency distance learning. But as we've come back this fall, the high school and the student council at the high school have continued to bring this forward to say it's still time for us to take a look at this. And as we were putting together a process that would include multiple stakeholders, the question from the high school came there. They have been concerned that if they do the work and for whatever reason it's not determined to move forward to change, would have been a lot of time spent on that without actually getting the logo, the mascot logo change. I want to be super clear. We're not talking about the name Raiders, right? That's forever, right? I mean, we're not talking about that. We're talking about updating, the mascot logo. And so what I'm going to consider asking you to think through is I'd like to bring to you at the next meeting, not a policy, right, but follow the same policy approach, where the board would then say, yes, we believe under these parameters we should update the Raider mascot logo as part of a general update moving forward. That way, the student committees and the other committees of alumni and people that they bring forward to help with this approach, they know that the change is going to happen, right? And so therefore, They are not concerned that I get to the end and maybe something happens where we don't update the logo. It would really follow the same approach that we have used with the building naming policy. So not asking you to do anything with it tonight, but what I am asking is I will tell you I'm most likely going to bring something like that to the next board meeting. I wouldn't ask you to vote on it at that meeting. I'd bring you forward a motion. It would include the parameters for the group to create a mascot logo, so there's some parameters. I'd bring that motion to you the next time so you could ask questions, and then ask you to vote on it at the following board meeting. This would follow the similar strategy that we used moving ahead with it, or with the building naming policy. So I want to share that with you, that is something I'm considering bringing forward. I'm curious if people have feedback about that tonight. But that is my operations report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let's take questions and comments in two parts. Let's begin with COVID-19 questions, and then we'll address the Raider mascot logo after that. Jeff?
Yeah, on COVID, it's unfortunate that that's going up. I'm just wondering, is there for lack of a better term, is there a sweet spot of that for testing? I mean, obviously, if you could do that every day, but I mean, what's the past? What's the future? And I know that hopefully there's something coming that's very inexpensive and you can do it on a very regular basis. So as far as the progression of what you see, I mean, obviously more testing, more cases, but you know, where have we been on the testing part and where are we going?
Well, Jeff, I'm really happy you brought that up because I had a note to talk about testing and I got so whipped up into the other things I did not bring it forward. So as I mentioned, I did have a chance to meet with Dr. Deborah Burke. She's the White House Coronavirus Task Force Chair. A few weeks ago I was part of a group that met with her in Rochester. And what the experts in the field are saying is the way to really get this under control is regular testing, just like you have mentioned, Jeff. There are a number of new tests that have come out that are more rapid response kinds of tests. Unfortunately, they are specifically what we're looking to do is test asymptomatic people, right? Because what we know is a lot of the spread in Minnesota is happening among asymptomatic people in family gatherings, like watching football games, you know, things like that, because people just let their guard down. Of course they do. So the testing needs to be ramped up. So there's two things I'm going to share with you. One, we reached out to the Department of Health shortly after that meeting, talking about could we become a pilot site for a school-based testing program. We had a little bit of discussion with them, and I'm proud to share with you that it looks like we are going to have a school-based testing program. So it would be the nasal swab, not the brain tickler, not the more invasive one. There's a new, less invasive swab test that is a PCR test, which is the more reliable. We are just shared the data. We surveyed our staff, and we are inviting also to participate in the program our partners at Arcadia Charter School, Prairie Creek, and St. Dominic. We had over 400 people take the survey, and about 11% of the people said that they would not be interested in testing. We're not going to compel our staff to test. We're not going to require them, but it's something that we have 89% of the respondents who said they would test at least once, with the vast majority, nearly 80%, saying they'd be willing to be tested 3 or more times. So that's really good data. So we're working with the Department of Health on the logistics part of that next. Our goal is to have the first testing date on November 18th. We would then have another testing date on December 2nd and another testing date on December 16th. So to my knowledge, we would be the first public school district in Minnesota to have this test. In addition, we had gone after it really talking about our staff. But the way that we're going to do it logistically is we are also going to invite students to participate totally on their own, right? We are going to actually schedule it on a Wednesday. We're going to schedule it for Northfield Middle School, and we will urge families to consider it, but we will not have it on. There are no students on campus on Wednesdays at Northfield Middle School. It's a distance learning for all day. So any student testing would be totally voluntary. We've also had questions, could families be tested? And we are working with MDH on what those parameters are. So that's the way we're trying to control it. I also understand that today Governor Walz made an announcement making the mail order saliva tests available to all Minnesotans. There had been 23 counties that had a pilot project for that. Steele County, probably the closest to it. Well, Dakota also had it, where residents could get those tests. My understanding is for free, but I think just like Molly had shared, if there is insurance available, they do like to charge the insurance first, though I have been told that regardless of whether you have insurance or not, you can get the test. So that's another big thing from Governor Walz and the administration, to be able to expand testing. So those are the things that we're looking at for testing right now, Jeff.
Other questions? Amy?
As we stand on the precipice of possibly moving into a different learning model, I'm wondering, we're not the first school district to have gone through this. Is there some central repository of good advice and ideas of how to successfully get through this type of situation, whatever direction you're going in?
You know, there's been a lot of sharing of information, Amy. So for example, I sit with 2 groups of superintendents, one group to our north and one group as part of our Big 9 group. We also have weekly calls with the Commissioner of Education every Thursday at 4 o'clock. So we are hearing a lot about places who have shifted. We're learning what was successful for them, what was not successful for them. And the Department of Health has also learned a lot, and the advice that they give is based upon all of the shifts that they have seen other school districts do. So we are very plugged into making sure that, and this is an example of, you know, for example, the hybrid elementary model, it changed significantly since the one that had been brainstormed in the summer, because we were reaching out to other schools who had shifted to that and said, what was working for you, what wasn't. So one of the things that school districts do really well is we do communicate with each other, we do learn from each other, we're not afraid to imitate successful things that other people have done, and then we try to innovate, of course, when we can and share those things. So we have been plugged in to what are the best practices for doing a learning model shift, and it is typically not something that's done on a dime. In fact, you know, the Department of Health advises people to have, even with rising case rates, to be thoughtful and give some lead time so families who have not yet made a plan have that ability to do so. So I think, Amy, we really learned a lot from other school districts. We're very grateful that we have not had to yet shift.
Thank you.
Tom?
So we've had 9 cases in the high school over the weekend.
Since Friday, yep.
Is that an unusual pattern? I mean, was it like 1 or 2 a week and then it went up?
Yeah, so, you know, we were seeing, you know, a handful. The high school, of course, has the most students, so by mathematics, you're most likely going to have the most cases there. But we really started to see it ramp up at the end of last week. So if you even just go back to Thursday, since Thursday of last week, we've had 14 new cases. So that's been a pretty significant increase. And again, that really mirrors what we're seeing at the county, right? Those big numbers that I shared with you at the county level, those were coming in on Wednesday, Thursday, and then over the weekend. So again, schools are microcosms of the communities that they're in. And so even with all of the precautions, you know, that we have taken, and again, most of our contact tracing, the vast majority of it is showing that people is defining, being definitive that, you know, people were in other circumstances where they were near someone who also tested positive. And again, that's really the engine, you know, for driving this, is we all want to watch the Gopher football game together, right? I'm watching it in my basement by myself with my youngest son because that's what we do these days. But for some people, they just, you get it, we have COVID fatigue, right? People are tired of doing all those things. And so people have, unfortunately, they've let their guard down in some cases, which is what I think has led to the increase, the significant increase. So yes, it is an unusual increase.
And there were 70 per 10,000, and then it went up to 94, and then back down to...
Now, these weren't per 10,000. These are cases per day since the day before. So on Friday, between Thursday and Friday, there were 94 new cases reported. When I sent this to you on Thursday, between Wednesday and Thursday, there had been 73 new cases reported. And on Sunday, according to MDH, just between Saturday and Sunday, there were 70 new cases reported. So that's the raw number, Tom, of new cases day over day.
Okay.
And then the cases rates per 10,000, 2 weeks ago, well, 3 weeks ago was 26.5. 2 weeks ago was 26.6. This past week it was 40.39. I think now they've revised that it's over 41 for last week because there's always some data cleanup. And like I said, I'm not going to share with you a prediction for the number this week, but let's just say it, I think we ain't seen nothing yet.
is there a tipping point where, you often talk about how an average over 2 weeks you can have a spike somewhere along the line. Is there a tipping point where, no, it's just going up and that's going to be the decision point?
So the Department of Health continues to emphasize using more than one piece of data, right? They continue to emphasize that. So as we've consulted with MDHs as most recently as this afternoon, those are the kinds that they're still asking you to make sure that you take a look at a variety of pieces of data. And there is, unfortunately, when the grid came out this summer, from Governor Walz in his executive order about the Safe Learning Plan, I think people are like, oh yes, all right, I know exactly. If it's this number, that's what it is. They've learned so much over the past 3 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, that they revised those guidelines to say, please make sure, so for example, when we first went over 20 cases per 10,000 residents, the 2-week average in Rice County, we were talking about having had 2 total cases at our 3 total cases across all 3 of our elementary schools, with influenza-like illness rates of less than 1%, with 5% being the time when MDH gets concerned. So when you take all of those things into account, even though that case rate had gone over 20, and which would have suggested hybrid learning for elementary, when we talked and consulted with MDH and we consulted with Rice County Public Health and our incident command team, the other data said, this is not the time to switch. However, I think as we see these exponentially increasing county case rates, I think that does change some of the dialogue, but what MDH is very careful to say is that no 2 school districts are the same. So by way of example, let's say that your case increase was significant, but let's say that you knew that it was because of one location within your county, a prison, a college, a residential school, a long-term care facility. If they knew that all of the cases were emanating from there and they were working on getting it contained, they'd probably say, nope, you can stick with what you're doing because we know exactly where those cases are. That kind of nuance, it does become more problematic when you see the higher numbers per 10,000.
And then it's not only the cases of the people who are infected, but the impact also on staffing, and that's going to be problematic in the high school, right?
Well, I think it's the problem with staffing is that you can have a problem with staffing and not have very many cases at your school. So that is, Molly Wieselman, our HR director, has got a spreadsheet we are looking at every day, and so far, we have been able to handle a lot of the absences, right? But not all of them, and so far we've been able to cover most of the teaching absences, almost all of the teaching absences. And you see we've been creative. We're bringing people in, they're zooming back into their classroom. We're using that OWL camera to be able to bring that teacher back into the room if they're home because maybe a loved one has been exposed, or maybe they've been exposed, but they're not feeling poorly. So we're trying to do a lot of creative things to the best of our ability, but we also know that this is an issue across the state. People who used to substitute for us, even though they might have even been on at the beginning of the year, now say, not exactly sure I want to put myself in the circumstance because of just being in public in general.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Rob, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't right now.
So just my comments on COVID we just are incredibly grateful for all the great work that's being done, and it's just really challenging, and I just applaud you for jumping on the pilot test program for testing. That was, to be the first school district to do that is just really huge. So I had a question about the teacher saliva test. I know there was sort of the expiration date of December 30th. Do we know if we've had a good response with teachers requesting the saliva tests?
Yeah, Julie, the data does not suggest that we have had many people order that. So when we sent that, we were required, as soon as we got it, to immediately transmit the code. So we did an email mail merge, gave everybody their code. We have had, I don't have the exact number, but I'll just say based on our conversation with MDH about the potential testing program, it has been a fairly low request rate. We are going to emphasize that that's something, again, that people can utilize as well.
And I was on the MDH call today, and I don't know if board members were able to tune into the governor's call on Friday, and the recording is also available on the MSBA website, but just the incredible support that they are trying to provide and how stretched they are in terms of trying to support, but I think they're just doing an incredible job. And I think to Amy's point, they are very, very good at also, you know, they are right in those calls every day with school districts. So they have been able to provide a lot of insight too as to what other districts are doing. But they're incredibly smart, incredibly dedicated, very, very stressed out in terms of trying to provide the support, but remain committed to doing that and reassure time and time again, and as did the governor, we want to help and we need to know. The governor made a few comments after some school board members and school administrators had put through some concerns was, I will address that, and I thank you for that feedback. He didn't really, he was very explicit in saying we will provide that and we're grateful for the feedback. So it was really amazing for him to take the time that he did with the school, so he has really prioritized how we keep kids in school is part of the work he's doing for COVID. So
Yeah, we just really need to emphasize, Minnesota has one of the best public health department systems in the country at that county level as well. We cannot talk COVID-19 in this district without thanking Cheryl Hall, our Director of Special Services. When I asked her, because health services falls under her purview, when I asked her this summer, I think she maybe wishes she went back and said something different when I asked her if she would be our COVID coordinator. But she has done an amazing job, and I just, if you have a chance to thank her, please do, because it has been every day. COVID doesn't take the weekend off, right? I mean, so the work that Cheryl and others have been doing are really, our principals doing contact tracing. It is, people have done an incredible job in a very, very difficult circumstance.
great, I'm glad Cheryl, because a couple things when you're on a call with her, just how the expertise she has and the understanding of all of the aspects of what's happening, and her just her work and really understanding everything and really doing the really hard work, but also the relationship she has with MDH. They really respect Cheryl quite a bit in terms of her work, and the great relationship she's built with them is obviously a benefit for the district. So if there's no more COVID-19 related questions, I will move on and ask if board members have any initial comments on Dr. Hillman's recommendation around having the board formally vote on a modernizing and updating of the current Raider mascot. Ellen.
So the one question I had with it is alludes to something that Jeff had mentioned when we were talking about the policies before, and I'm wondering if we were to move forward and vote on it, if we could ask the two newly elected but not yet serving members, they wouldn't be starting until January, to maybe provide written comment. And I know that when I was first elected 12 years ago, the Sibley addition was one of the things that was being discussed, and so they were going to be voting on it. You need to keep moving forward, but they wanted the newly elected members to weigh in and give, if they, there was no pressure to have support or not support, but they wanted to know. And so we were able to do that through public comment. So I'm wondering if that's a possibility.
Absolutely.
Excellent suggestion, thank you, Ellen. Other initial comments or reactions? Jeff?
Yeah, we were getting into this, I think it was, it was pre-COVID, and a couple of things. Obviously, David Nuger's a major talent and worked on our other logo, and right about that time, I actually had a meeting at his office talking about that, and really, Raider Guy is not a copyright or a trademark of the school district, period. So it's really got nothing to do with the school district. So, other than that, so I think that what we really have, we've done this before. We got a guy like Nuger in town, and I'm mentioning his name in a public thing. So I kind of had that conversation, with Dave, and I guess I can say how it went, but, I in a sense, I can say, well, we're not the Northfield ends, in a sense. And I think I had my older version of this hat on, but I would say right now, as far as a logo, we are the Northfield Ends for now. With this, you know, there's different versions of the N. There's this one and then that maroon one. And I think the other thing that we're missing that's actually really cool on this is and I'm, you know, the liaison, have been for years for sports, talking to Joel Olson, and I had this conversation with him, and obviously, you know, bring him in, and Joel Lear I did, you know, one day we were in there, and basically Joel Olson came out, and he was showing me all these uniforms, and pulling them all up, and that was one shade of maroon and gold, this was the other shade of maroon and gold, and it's like, you know, that's not good. We're maroon and gold, okay, and what maroon and gold are we? I mean, we're the same maroon and gold that the Gophers are, so if we're going to have one maroon and gold, that's the maroon and gold that we are. So that would be kind of the thing, but you know, obviously Joel Olson was at Eastridge for a while, but he was 10 years at Forest Lake, okay? He's got a whole logo program of what they did there when he changed the logos, which is just, and what were they, or what are they? The Rangers. Not a far stretch from the Rangers to the Raiders. What are their colors? Maroon and gold. So I think that you know, I also want to encourage in a positive way to tell, you know, the young people or the old people or whatever that have contempt for the old Raider guy. I mean, that's not a logo of the school district anyway. So people can wear what they want to wear, but that's not a logo. And I think that moving forward, you know, we want to have colors. We want to have based on kind of a version, I think, of what, you know, Joel Olson's got, and what we come up with Nuger and some stakeholders. What's our future? What future do we want to put in that, and make the positive energy about where that's going and not what the past was that people have contempt for it or not. But I mean, so people can wear what they want to wear, but again, the Raider guy's not an official logo of school district. So I think moving forward on that, we got some major talent and good, you know, roles to follow, and I think if you just get Joel Olson up and tell a story like that, we can very easily follow a process that makes sense in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, and I think that, Jeff, that's exactly why based on discussions with Joel Lear and Joel Olson, you know, they do have a very good process in mind. What they really would like is to have the board's support at the outset of it, so that they feel that the work that's going to be, so that when they execute that process, that it will be brought to completion.
Right. And I've seen those ideas, and it's kind of, I don't want to put the cat out of the bag in a sense, but obviously if we followed that process and did our own version of it, the combination of what Joel Olson has done before, and, you know, what we've done here, and with Nuger and coming up with some standards of, you know, and I think with uniforms, I mean, yeah, we want to all be one color, and you can't have a coach coming in and asking for different colors and stuff, so that's controversial too, but, you know, what are our colors? And I mean, I'm thinking, and I've had that conversation with Joel Olson, you know, we're maroon and gold, we're the same maroon and gold as the Gophers are, so I mean, sure that'd be, you know, part of the decision, so. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Other questions, comments? Rob, did you have a question or comment on the Raider mascot discussion?
No, I mean, I support the idea of having the board officially authorize it, as Matt said, that we can let the high school know that their work will lead to something that we've, you know, given them that guidance.
Great, thank you. I said one follow-up to what Jeff was saying, and I think that's something that would really, you know, we look at this as really an opportunity to strengthen our brand and to move forward, and I appreciate you saying it in a positive way. And I know one thing we are lacking, and most schools have, is what's a developed identity guide, where you do give colors and you talk about ways that the logo being the N and the mascot, whatever that will be in terms of how it's replicated and the colors used, etc. I know, again, I know St. Olaf, Carleton, most colleges have, and Ellen knows this from her work at, you know, Carleton as well, as she's shaking her head, but I think the development of a identity guide would be really helpful.
And obviously Nuger's an expert at that too, and I think that, just to add one other point to that, is if we can, you know, trademark those things that people just can't go out and just, you know, use that logo without us making a royalty outfit as a school district, or however that's set up. But So,
Yeah,
anyway,
I think we'll have to get some advice from Nuger on the trademark. I understand there's, you know, we would have to, you know, have some enforcement of that. And so it can get to be a little bit, you know, the devil's in the detail on that in terms of being able to monitor every time that it's replicated, and if we have the enforcement capabilities of monitoring that, et cetera. But I think it's important to have that discussion, and I think we would look to Nuger to understand the pros and cons of moving into a trademark situation.
I'm no expert on that topic, but I'm sure we want to be able to, you know, through our logo, put out our message and, you know, make sure we're controlling how that is used in you know, in the sale of products that have that logo on it.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for the good discussion.
Yep, I've got what I need. Thank
Okay,
you.
excellent. So we'll move forward now to our next, we are done with items for discussion, so we can move on to the consent grouping. There was personnel items in the table file, as well as the Northfield Swim Club agreement, which was in the table file as well. Northfield Swim Club. So is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Alan, is there a second? Second by Amy. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on now to items for individual action. We do have 4 of them this evening, all of which we have discussed at previous board meetings. So again, they're items for individual action. So to begin, I will ask for a motion on our first item, which is a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the AOC, Randolph, and Tri-City United High Schools. Is there a motion? Moved by Amy. Is there a second? Second by Tom. So opportunity now for questions and comments. I think you noted that there was a review by the district's legal district lawyers, and there was some additional verbiage that was added to the memorandum of understanding. So are there any questions?
We've got Daryl Keller here as well if there are further questions.
Rob, did you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So without any questions or comments, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Our second item for individual action are the policies we reviewed at our previous board meeting on October 26th. So is there a motion to approve policies 419, 516, and 607 as presented? Moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Tom. Questions or comments on these 3 policies? Amy?
I hate to be the troublemaker, but I have a question on each of them.
That's fine.
I just want to make sure I understand before we vote on it. So, for policy 419, the tobacco policy, my question is, really, if a student has tobacco products in their car and it's parked at the high school or on school property, is that considered a violation? It's unclear, and the reason I ask is I know a lot of students drive their family cars and are not always in control of everything that's in that car. And I think it's something we should make clear in the policy one way or the other, and I think it's actually probably better not to have it be okay that they have tobacco products in their car if their parent has left a pack of cigarettes or something in the car, you know, and they're just driving the family car, that might be fine. But I thought we should clarify that in the policy.
And Amy, as I'm looking at under letter B, 2B, when it says that a violation of this policy occurs when any elementary school, middle school, or secondary school student possesses any type of tobacco-related product in a public school, and then it extends to all facilities, whether owned, rented, or leased vehicles, leases, rents, contracts, school hours, and more than, so it includes all school district property and off-campus. So a parking lot is school district property, and if I'm a secondary student, regardless of if I've driven that vehicle to school, and it's on my property, or it's on the school district property, I would say that's a violation of the policy.
That's sort of how I was reading it too, and I'm not sure I'm completely comfortable with not having some sort of exception if it's off in the parking lot and they don't have anything to do with it.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's different than the weapons policy where we don't want any weapons brought to school, but I think in a situation where they're using a family car, possibly we're talking about something smaller, maybe that might be something we should just think through. And if we don't want to have an exception, I think we need to add including personal vehicles into the policy.
So in terms of you're suggesting just adding personal vehicles there?
Right. They could say this prohibition includes all, includes personal vehicles on all school district property and.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it a huge deal to expand, the definition.
Jeff, you have a
Let's just say from time to time, if we had, as we had before, law enforcement come in and are doing locker searches and going through with dogs, and doing the cars and opening that up. And I think whatever, obviously, we've been here and done that before, so whatever that rule is with the other rules we've got, they've got to kind of, that, and obviously we can say whatever rules we want, but we can't supersede what the state of Minnesota or federal law is. So to me, that might be a little bit of a contradiction or whatever it is with the policy here, kind of has to match up and work the same if we're doing random searches. It's got to somehow be fair. You know what I mean? I mean, tobacco or alcohol or anything, if it's a banned substance on the premise, it's got to follow in one policy and the other.
And I think this policy does that, Jeff.
Okay. Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I mean that's just what I would say.
Right. I can see the point of adding something about including personal vehicles, but I think this does absolutely align with those other things that you just mentioned, Jeff.
I did look up a little bit about what the current law is in the state, and specifically Northfield, because Northfield doesn't differ from the rest of the state. And my understanding is in Northfield, it's illegal for anyone to sell tobacco products to someone who's under 21.
That's correct.
However, someone who is 18, 19, 20 can possess alcohol, tobacco products, can use tobacco products. They could even conceivably buy them, but no one should be selling them to it. So there's another question there too, is if they're already a legal adult, they legally can possess the tobacco.
Right, but as a student, they're not able to do that on our school district property. So the key controlling part there is that they're the student. So when you're a student at our school, even though I might have a right to do something else, there's a number of things that you could have a right to do elsewhere outside of the school that you don't because of the fact that we're running, a school district where there are a handful of 18-year-olds each year comparatively to the rest. So I think, Amy, we're covered there because the controlling statement talks about a student regardless of their age.
And I'm fine with that. I just had to clarify that for my own understanding. But I'm still not sure about the personal vehicles and how they should be approached. And I was hoping to see what other people thought. If no one else cares, I can let it go, but I thought it was something we should at least address and think through before we formalize the policy.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about them. It's exactly, and this is why we do it twice.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep in the woods here, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, what dominion do we have as far as laws or policies to make? You know, because it's all about being on school property. When they're here, we have the legal right to make these decisions, and I suppose we could be superseded by state law and federal law, but what are those decisions that are legal? And obviously, we don't want policies that contradict each other either, so.
Well, and I think we do have the ability to create policies that govern, how people interact here, and this would be one of them. And I do want to point out too that, this is the State School Boards Association model policy that we're using, so.
All right, good. That's good.
Other questions or comments people have about the, or maybe objection or willingness to have the personal, we would add personal vehicle?
Correct.
Does anyone object to that?
Well, I would say, I guarantee at some point you're going to get that challenge if you start writing something different than what's necessarily backed up by, a larger organism. And not that it couldn't be challenged anyway. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah, I think what Amy is
it
saying.
could be challenged anyway, but.
What I think Amy is saying is that, I think the inherent reading of the policy says that I'm a student and I can't possess it, right? And so therefore, if it's in my vehicle on school property, it's a violation of the policy. But I think for the purposes of the plain reading of the policy, what I hear Amy saying is, let's make that explicit, right? That, even though it's the policy, I would argue, covers the parking lot, right? I think Amy is saying, let's make sure that we explicitly talk about the personal vehicle, which is simply an addition. If I'm characterizing what you're saying correctly.
We've talked about it one way or the other, and yes, I would like, if we're gonna include it, we should make it explicit, because I think if it's kind of a gray area there, and I still worry about some people driving their family cars, but I don't think we're gonna be searching everyone's vehicles every day either, but.
Nope.
Rob, do you have a question or comment?
I feel like Amy's suggestion is good because since it talks specifically about school-owned vehicles, I mean, there's a confusion that's set up there that talks about one kind of vehicles, and then you could say that maybe if one is mentioned and the other one is excluded, it would just clarify it a little bit to say that personal vehicles are also included when they're on school district property. I mean, I think that the policy does say that by saying school district property, but I think the personal vehicles on school district property would clarify that so you wouldn't get confused that, that there's a mention of one kind of vehicles, but someone might think, oh, it's not a school-owned vehicle, so I can have it, because that, anyway, I think I would support just adding that little clarification. Personal vehicles on school district property.
It almost doesn't say anything about personal vehicles. Obviously, it should be personal vehicles as well. Right?
Yeah, I think it can be clarified.
Right.
I'm sorry, Ellen.
So, yeah, I understand the point of confusion, and I don't disagree. I'm just wondering, because would it just be all vehicles then? I mean.
Right, why differentiate? Why?
I don't know.
Well,
Or is it because you could have an adult here on campus that's under any circumstances and it's their vehicle and then it's not school-owned or any of these things. They're not using it for any school function. So then that's the exception, is actually that is the piece. Is that what we're saying then?
Yeah, that's exactly how I would see it, is that, you're just trying to clarify it in that way.
And I think some people would define personal vehicles as their own property and somehow floating above the school property or something, so they see an exception there, because, oh, that's my vehicle, it's not in the building, or it's not. So it does need to be very, very clear.
Yeah, and I think we can clarify it simply with what Rob had said, and I think if the board were to approve this, but directing us to make, I think we'd even just need to look at the word personal, because as I think it would be, any vehicle driven to school by a student or any student-driven vehicle or something like that, because I might not own that vehicle, which it might not be my personal vehicle, so I think that's something to clarify as well. So we can certainly, if you are comfortable approving it with us making that tweak to add that and empowering us to make the right language determination, we certainly can do that.
Don't make it about who owns the vehicle, make it the fact that the student drove it to school.
Yeah.
So do I need to make some sort of,
I guess the question is, it a consequential addition?
no, it's just a clarification.
So I think in that case, I think we can
Yeah, I
approve the policy
don't
with,
know that we need a formal,
Okay.
approve a formal amendment. Thank you, though. Amy. Now, you had questions on the
All
other
right,
policies?
so then the other ones,
Maybe before we move on then, do any other board members have a question on policy 419? Okay, so then let's move on to policy 516.
I'm just curious with the student medication, again, if a student is 18 and can have their own, if they're legally adults, can they carry their own medication in school? Is that,
nope, they need to bring it to they're supposed to bring it to the nurse's office.
okay.
Because in E it says, prescription medications are not to be carried by the student. And again, I think that's a similar circumstance to whether you're 18 or not, you're a student here. And so those medications are to be stored in the nurse's office.
So the question is, yeah, I just thought that was important because someone's gonna ask that question. Maybe we can say, I mean, do we need to be more clear there as well, that even students over 18?
Well, I think you're a student regardless of whether, if you're a student, regardless of whether you're 18 or not, the policy governs you.
Okay.
So that one I'm very comfortable with, Amy.
Okay.
Because I think that part about being a student supersedes, there are policies where we talk about someone being 18 because there are certain things that you can do for yourself. There are certain things I can do for myself when I reach that age of majority. I'm still part of the school community, I still have to follow those policies. In this case, after having the nurses having taken a look at this, I feel very comfortable that that is clear.
And then the other thing I had, which was just a suggestion, is if there's a sample prescription medication form, or we talk about everything they have to include in their note to the school, and it would just be nice if there's some blank form that they could fill out. And I don't know if that could be attached to the policy, or just a general recommendation that I would like to suggest going forward when they put the policy in use.
And that would be something that we could add to the, would be something that would be in fact, I have to tell you, I'm not even sure we don't have that. I don't have it with me here, but we'll check with the nurses to see if what you're asking for is a template.
Right.
Is there a template that could be
So that way
created?
people don't have to read through, not that they read the policy that closely anyway, but, I have to remember to put this down and this down and this down. And it's just a form they could fill out.
And that wouldn't be part of the policy or the procedure, it would simply be a supporting document. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. And then, that's all my questions on that one.
Could I ask board members if any other board members have a question on policy 516? Okay, so we'll move on then to policy 607.
And then, policy 607, this is similar to the question I asked last meeting, and I'm still just trying to understand under 3A, where it says kindergarten means a program designed for students 5 years of age on September 1st. I think someone reading that might assume that they have to be 5 years of age to go to kindergarten, and we had talked about the possibility of people going to kindergarten when they're 6. especially next year. There might be a lot of kindergartners starting a year later. And so I was wondering if we could change that to say kindergarten means a program designed for students at least 5 years of age on September 1st.
Yeah, and Aaron, I just want to ask your opinion on that. I don't see an issue with that, but do you see any issues there?
I don't see any issues there either. I mean, I think we always have some children that choose to start kindergarten when they're 6 because there's always some that would choose a summer birthday and may choose to delay the start of kindergarten because they're a June through August birthday. You are right, Amy, we will likely see an increase of this next year, but it does happen every year.
And I just like it to be, again, clear in the policy. So we don't mean just 5-year-olds, we need people who are at least 5.
And again, I think that's similar to the suggestion before. It's not a consequential change, so I think that if we approve it, we can make the change to it as well.
And those are my comments. Thank you for your patience.
Excellent. Does anyone else have a question on policy 607? Tom?
Following on what Amy said, so is pre-kindergarten designed for students younger than 5 years? Does that also apply to if they were going to go into kindergarten at 6 years?
Yeah, so Aaron, I'm fairly certain when we talk about that the pre-kindergarten part is a specific program that is designed for, that is paid for by the state, and there's a definition. And while we can enroll students in preschool after they're age 5, we can't enroll them in the statewide pre-K program, which generates different revenue. Did I say that correctly, Aaron?
So we can't enroll children who are kindergarten eligible. So if you were one of those summer child birthdays we're talking about and you're technically kindergarten eligible because you are 5 before the end of August, we can no longer enroll you in either of the pathway scholarship programs. Those dollars are not eligible if you are kindergarten eligible. We have in circumstances used some of our internal kindergarten readiness funding depending on the situation of a child, but those pathway scholarships are not able to be awarded to children who would be kindergarten eligible as defined by the state age guidelines.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the 3 policies, 419, 516, and 607. So all those in favor of approving as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Our 4th item for individual action is something we do every year, which is regarding funding from the Minnesota State High School League Foundation. Is there a motion to approve the resolution of the school board supporting Form A, application to Minnesota State High School League Foundation as presented? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Any questions or comments on this? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I'm sorry, Alan, you had a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. Thank you, Alan. Yes, it is a resolution. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, it's a resolution, so it is a roll call. Anita?
Marania,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson, Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmore,
Aye.
Excellent, motion carries. Thank you, Alan, very much for that. Our next item is also a resolution, so it is, we pass this every year. I will ask for a motion, and then we can, if there's any questions or comments. Is there a motion to approve the resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election as presented? Moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Questions or comments regarding this resolution? Okay, again, resolution, so roll call vote.
Marania,
Aye.
Gurwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon.
Aye.
Excellent, motion carries. Items for information. Dr. Hillman, we have quite a few this evening, as well as one that was in your table file.
Yes, so our first item for information. Give me for a moment, I need to get my agenda here.
Enrollment option.
That's what I thought. Okay, great. So our enrollment options update, you'll see, and we will get you, there's another version of this that we have that, that has a multi-year over year piece. We just didn't have that ready for you this evening. But you'll see the this year's enrollment options report is a little bit different than in the past. We have seen a pretty substantial increase going from 150 students to 207 students who have opted for homeschool. This is something that we have seen throughout the state. You'll see we've increased from 74 to 94 families. And again, not a shock. That was one of the options that we know many people looked at in responding to the pandemic. We look at that we did see an increase in students going to charter schools, the largest increase of which is going to the MTCS Connections School, which is an online charter school. So again, people looking at different options. We have 640 students who have taken advantage of our Portage program, but we still have people who look for some other options there. So in general, those are the two major changes in Northfield students going to charter schools. When you take a look at the next page, you're going to see that when we take a look at the non-resident students in, you're going to notice that we saw some increases in students going to Farmington, and just a couple more to New Prague, a couple more to Randolph. But you'll notice on the non-resident students in that we had a 32 student increase coming to Northfield this year from Faribault over last year. So we're now at 326 students opting for Northfield Public Schools there. You've seen a few more Kenyon-Wanamingo students. And of course, we got a couple more Randolph students too, so it looks like it might have evened out this past year. So you're seeing those are the pieces we increased from the non-resident students in, from 419 to 455. And we also increased the number of students out, but just 227 to 237. So of course, we've been waiting for this. No shock to any of us that we saw an increase in people participating in homeschooling. Also some increases in people choosing one specific online academy, online charter school.
I think if my math is correct, our net loss is 420 students.
And I think the important thing to remember is that's always been the case, because when we look at the charter schools that we authorize in town, which we're proud authorizers of Prairie Creek and Arcadia, a big driver of that.
Do you want to then review the enrollment report?
Sure.
That was part of the table file, then we can have an overall enrollment
You bet.
discussion before moving on to the other
So,
items.
yep, when we take a look at the enrollment report, we're looking at that we actually increased a little bit over October 1st. You'll see that our October 1st data was 3883, and at the end of, or the beginning of November, we're at 3890 in terms of the full-time only students. That excludes the early childhood and part-time independent study, but you'll see that that number even increased as well in the grand total just above. So good to see that we increased by a few more students between October and November.
Okay. Any questions board members have on the enrollment options report and the November latest enrollment report? November. Okay. So we'll move on then to the proclamation of Community Education Day.
Yes, so we want to point out the importance of our community education program and thank our Director of Community Education, Erin Bailey, for all of her work. I'm going to briefly read this proclamation from Governor Walz. Whereas there is an increasing public insistence that all levels of government become more responsive to people's needs and desires. And whereas there is a limited amount of tax money and other resources, both human and physical, available to meet demand for facilities, programs, and services. And whereas full use of existing public facilities, programs, and services is a desirable community goal. And whereas community education philosophy advocates full use of public facilities, programs, and services by every age group in the community. And whereas community education philosophy assumes that when local communities identify their own needs and resources and public agencies work cooperatively, community betterment will result. And whereas agency coordination and cooperation improve public service and maximize the use of tax money, and whereas the involvement of local communities is essential to the development of community education programs. Now, therefore, I, Tim Walz, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim Thursday, November 12th, as Community Education Day. So we know that our community education program has persevered through some of the most difficult times in its entire existence. You know, it is a market-driven program, and the pandemic has been something that has been very difficult. But due to the skilled leadership of Erin Bailey and her team, we have continued to work forward, and we are very proud of our community education program. So we wanted to share that proclamation with you.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions or comments? Amy?
Well, I know Erin's great and the whole team is wonderful, but I'm just wondering, how are we going to celebrate?
6 feet apart. With masks.
Excellent, thank you. And Erin, thank you, and to your incredible team, just doing amazing work. And we just have, I would say, arguably one of the best community education programs in the state. And I think it's something where our community doesn't really understand how incredibly good our community education program is. And particularly with our new facility, it's really amazing. And you were one of the first to have to delve into how to handle so many things this summer with COVID, and you took on those challenges. We learned a lot from the work that your team did, and we are still incredibly grateful for the time that you did that this summer for us, and the way that you are handling the challenges like every other building in the midst of the pandemic. So thank you.
Thank you, and Amy, we will send out some highlights this week in lieu of having a celebration.
Sounds great. I'll look forward to it.
Excellent. Okay. Our next item for information is timeline for renaming Longfellow and Sibley, which was included in your packet.
Yes. So I just put together, and we're just off a little bit. We had a few other things happen over the weekend, as I mentioned before. So we may just have to adjust the Longfellow School timeline. But what I wanted to share with you is the fact of how we are going to have broad stakeholder feedback through surveys that would go out through multiple methods. You're seeing that we have a naming committee set up for each school, so that that smaller group of people can take all of the submissions, and that they can filter those and provide you with a handful of names for you to consider. So we are going to be able to move fairly quickly, while at the same time really including broad stakeholder feedback. And so we will continue to work through this. This first timeline for Longfellow School may not be dead on to what I've given you today, but the point was to share with you what the workflow would look like, how we would consider it, and I'd be, of course, open to any suggestions here.
Board members, questions, comments? I just appreciate what the process that we were able to use when we named the Northfield Community Education Center, and I think the engagement of so many stakeholders is really great.
Absolutely.
And the timeline is completely understandable. So, okay, any other questions, comments? So we'll move on to our last item for information, which is the construction update number 36, and starts to come down to just Longfellow School.
Yes, so we've got just a few more materials to finish off some of the punch list items at Greenville Park, Sibley, and the Community Ed Center. Longfellow, as you can see the list there, there's some taping, there's some painting, and then the window replacement is going to begin this week.
Okay, any questions?
When will the new chambers ever be done, and are you ever looking for any feedback on those, or just doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so we, you're talking about for the boardroom? Yeah, so, we ran a full process in which we had several board members who were part of that. Julie, I think you were part of that group, and Amy was part of that group as part of the design process. Pardon me?
I never saw anything myself.
Okay, well, I thought we had given an update about Longfellow's plans at one of these meetings, but I can get those
Yeah,
to
I
you.
would like to look and see what the,
Yep, it's there,
I'm sure it's good, I just haven't seen it.
yeah, it's a very good use of space. You know, of course, where the boardroom will be is in the basement, which would have been the media center, most likely, right across from the cafeteria when you were at Longfellow, Jeff.
Right.
And so they're making that to a multi-function space. We will have a board days that will not have to be set up and taken down, which is a real advantage. But that room will also be able to be cordoned off so that you can have multiple spaces used as training rooms, which is going to be an excellent feature to have for the district. So we're trying to make that room something that is useful, not just for the board meeting nights, right, but for staff to use during the rest of the year as well.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get you the sketch, Jeff.
So that is items for information, future meetings. So the Friday, November 13th is actually this week. We've talked a number of times about the special board meeting that we will convene via Zoom to canvass the election results. And just a reminder, if it is problematic for any board member to attend, we do just need a quorum of four board members. And then those members who are present at the meeting would need to come by the district office that same day to sign some documents. Yes, Amy?
Do Noel and I have any conflict of interest in this?
No, I thought about that. As board members, we've always canvassed results, even if they included our own. But thank you for that. No, thanks for that clarification. I'm sorry, no.
We haven't in the past, and I don't believe we got any financial gain, which is one of the criteria.
Okay. So board members, if it is problematic, let me know, because again, I'm confident that there are a minimum of 4 of us that would be available. So that will happen this Friday, and then regular board meetings. Monday, November 23rd is our last board meeting in November, and then Monday, December 14th, all of those regular school board meetings are in the Northfield High School Media Center and via Zoom, depending on where we're at with the current pandemic situation. Monday, December 14th is our only board meeting during the month of December. So with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Amy. So great meeting, everyone. Thank you for all the great questions and comments. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.